And we're going to transition into even more sides of the business as you go from booking to management. And I can't imagine this was seamless at all, because this is just a completely different world between booking for an artist and managing the artist. There's a lot more involved, obviously. But what obstacles did you face in that transition when you're going from booking for somebody to becoming a full blown manager, essentially?
Well, I think I benefited from location
Mm-hmm.
because in Oklahoma, they had a great music scene in Oklahoma City, but there wasn't a real business infrastructure. There weren't established managers, there weren't established booking agents, or there were established booking agents, but they were no established managers. So uh, they didn't have anybody really to turn to,
Mm-hmm.
and I saw them need help that I had experienced in my own. So, for example, like, let's just talk about from the live perspective. I knew what they were doing out there. So, and they knew, and sometimes I would end up going out and playing drums for acts that I was managing or booking,
Wow.
because they knew I was a drummer, and they'd call and they'd say, "Hey, our drummer can't make it this week. Can you come out and play with us for a week, or can you come play this weekend?" And so, I would go play for the acts that I would be managing or developing. But management really started out with my own groups back there in the Joplin days and the St. Louis days, and after that, um, where I was the band leader. I was the guy in charge. I collected the money. I booked the shows. I drove the van. I owned the lights, owned the PA. I had my own little cottage industry. So when it came time to become a manager, I already understood what it took to get an act on television, let's say for a radio interview.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a handle on the PR side. I had taken creative business communications in college, so I knew how to write a press release that would get people's attention. I didn't know that was publicity. I didn't know that was what it was called.
Mm-hmm.
Or I just knew that that was what I did, and I understood how to book shows, and I understood how to read people, so I could help them, build a team or help them find musicians.
So there
Uh,
had to
you
be a
know,
lot of trial by error to know what's needed, right? Like, oh my
yeah,
gosh, this is something that needs to be done. So let me learn how to do it.
right. And so you just learn how to do it. It's like,
Right.
I always had a saying. Billy Block, I think, originated this. It's like when people would ask me, "What do you do?" Billy would say, "What do you need?"
Mm-hmm.
And that was kind of always been me. There's never been anything that I felt like, if I didn't know it, I was going to go learn it. If I didn't know, I would tell them, look, I don't know the answer to your question, but I'm going to find out. And I don't know how to do this, but we're going to do it
And
because I'm
it's
going to.
funny you say that because my son asked me when I told my son that you were coming on my show. He said, "What does he do?" And I answered him with, "What does he not do?" So very similar to what you just said. So funny that you said that. That's why I was chuckling. I'm sorry for interrupting you.
Oh, that's okay. No, I've always been blessed to. I was always curious. I wanted to know. I wanted to understand how publishing worked.
Hmm.
I wanted to understand why, how a record deal worked. So I made it my business to learn a little bit about every facet of what it took to get a band from the garage to a venue, a club, or wherever, up to the next level. I mean, it's like, what does it take to get from this step to this step to this step? And there's no real formula cut and dried. I mean, there's certain things that you need to do, but there really isn't a. Every artist is different too. There is no, oh, this is how we did it, so this is exactly how you should do it too.
Right. Yep. And it's funny because there's so many different branches to the music business. We're talking about booking and management. There's being an agent. There's distribution. There's publishing. There's so many different sides to it. It kind of reminds me of um, Tom Brady over the years has been asked why he was so successful. And he would say that the reason why he felt he was so good at what he did is because he didn't just learn his job. He learned everybody's job on the offense. And then he learned everybody's job on the defense, too. So he knew everybody's job better than they did. And that's what made him so successful. So it kind of reminds me of what you're talking about here, where you're kind of reaching out and trying to understand what everybody has to do and what each job's function is in somebody's career. It's interesting.
Yeah, I always made it, I always wanted to know as much, I didn't know what a song plugger was or
Hmm.
how the publishing world worked. So I dove in and learned it. And, I founded two publishing companies. And I ran, after I came to Nashville, I ran a publishing company for quite a few years. Matter of fact, one of my dear friends was asking me earlier if I'd thought about being a song plugger. And I said, I've done that.
Hmm. I
It was
mean,
very competitive.
what haven't you done, Cliff? I mean, let's be honest.
Well, I'm a curious soul,
Same,
Chris.
same.
I'm a curious soul, and I've worked a lot of times worked with artists where we didn't have money to go hire a staff, a team. So I go, okay, well, okay, I'm going to put my manager hat on for this task, and the next phone call, I'm going to put my booking agent hat on,
Hmm.
and the next phone call, I'm going to put my tour manager hat on, and the next phone call, I'm going to put on my label head hat. Um, and I ran an independent label for a decade.